The United States was the first country in the world to develop and use an atomic bomb. In 1939, scientists like Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard warned President Roosevelt that Germany might be working on atomic weapons. The U.S. responded by launching a secret program called the Manhattan Project. It was a massive effort. Over 130,000 people were involved, working in hidden facilities across the country. The goal: split atoms of uranium or plutonium to unleash incredible energy, enough to destroy entire cities. By 1945, the U.S. had built 3 atomic bombs. 2 were dropped on Japan: Hiroshima on August 6th and Nagasaki on August 9th. The war ended shortly after, but the nuclear age had begun. After World War II, the U.S. kept its monopoly on nuclear weapons, but it didn't last long. In 1949, the Soviet Union tested its own bomb, and a dangerous arms race began. During the Cold War, the U.S. and USSR stockpiled thousands of nuclear weapons. By the 1960s, both had enough firepower to destroy the planet several times over. To stay ahead, the U.S. developed more advanced weapons, including hydrogen bombs, far more powerful than the ones used in World War II. It also built intercontinental ballistic missiles that could deliver warheads across the globe in under 30 minutes. And it deployed nuclear submarines capable of launching missiles from anywhere in the ocean. This became known as the nuclear triad: land-based missiles, submarine-launched missiles, and strategic bombers. The idea was that no matter what, the U.S. could strike back if attacked. This is called mutual assured destruction. The idea that in a nuclear conflict, both countries would be destroyed. The U.S. doesn't rule out using nuclear weapons first, especially if attacked with biological or chemical weapons. This is called a first-use policy. However, it mostly relies on nuclear deterrence, the idea that the threat of retaliation is enough to stop enemies from attacking. The Soviet Union was the second country to build a nuclear bomb, and it did so because it felt threatened. After seeing the U.S. use atomic bombs in 1945, Soviet leaders knew they had to catch up fast or lose global influence. Even before the war ended, Soviet scientists were working on nuclear research, but what gave them a major boost was espionage. Soviet agents had infiltrated the U.S. Manhattan Project and passed on crucial data, saving years of work. In 1949, the Soviets tested their first atomic bomb in Kazakhstan. The test shocked the world and ended the U.S. monopoly on nuclear weapons. Just 4 years later, they tested a hydrogen bomb, far more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima. Throughout the Cold War, the Soviet Union massively expanded its nuclear program. It built thousands of warheads, intercontinental missiles, ICBMs, bombers, and submarines, creating a full nuclear triad. Their goal was to keep up with or surpass the U.S. One of the most dangerous moments came in 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. After a tense standoff, both sides stepped back, realizing how close they came to all-out war. By the 1980s, the Soviet arsenal reached its peak, over 40,000 warheads. But in 1991, the USSR collapsed. Its nuclear weapons ended up spread across Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. With U.S. help, those outside Russia were dismantled or returned. Today, Russia is the main nuclear power to come out of the Soviet Union. As of 2024, it has about 5,900 warheads, slightly more than the U.S. Around 1,600 of those are deployed and ready to use. The United Kingdom was the third country in the world to develop nuclear weapons. During World War II, British scientists were among the first to study how nuclear fission could be used to make a bomb. When the war escalated, Britain and the U.S. decided to merge their efforts, and many British scientists joined the American Manhattan Project. They played a key role, especially in theoretical physics and bomb design. But after the war ended, the U.S. passed laws that cut off nuclear cooperation, even with its closest ally. That move shocked British leaders. They realized that if they wanted to stay a major global power, they needed their own nuclear weapons, independent from the U.S. In 1952, the U.K. tested its first atomic bomb in Australia, becoming the world's third nuclear power. It was a major moment. Despite being economically weak after the war, Britain proved it still had cutting-edge science and global ambition. A few years later, in 1957, the U.K. tested its first hydrogen bomb. Like the U.S. and Soviet Union, Britain now had thermonuclear capability, weapons hundreds of times more powerful than the ones dropped on Japan. Over time, the U.K. built dozens of nuclear warheads and developed its own delivery systems, including bombers and missiles. However, as costs rose and technology advanced, Britain realized it couldn't afford to keep up with the U.S. and Soviet Union. So, it focused on smaller but still credible nuclear forces. By the 1960s, Britain gave up its independent missile systems and adopted American-built ones. weapons. It joined the U.S. in operating Polaris submarine-launched ballistic missiles. This marked the start of the UK's sea-based deterrent, a strategy that continues today. Currently, the UK has only one leg of the nuclear triad: submarine-launched ballistic missiles. It operates 4 Vanguard-class submarines, and at least one of them is always on patrol, ready to fire if needed. France became the 4th country in the world to develop nuclear weapons. But unlike the UK, France didn't want to rely on allies. Its leaders believed that real independence meant having their own nuclear force, under French control, on French terms. The idea of a French bomb started during and right after World War II. French scientists had been working on nuclear physics before the war, but their progress was interrupted by the Nazi occupation. After the war, they picked up where they left off. In the 1950s, tensions with the Soviet Union were growing, and France began to worry about being left out of key decisions by NATO or the US. The final push came during the Suez Crisis in 1956, when the US and UK backed down and pressured France to withdraw from Egypt. French leaders felt humiliated and realized they couldn't count on others for defense. In 1960, France tested its first atomic bomb in the Algerian desert. The test, called Gerboise Bleue, was successful, and France joined the nuclear club. In 1968, they tested a hydrogen bomb, making their arsenal far more powerful. France developed its own delivery systems, including bombers, ballistic missiles, and submarines. France operates 4 Triumphant-class submarines, each carrying M51 ballistic missiles, with multiple warheads on board. At least one submarine is always at sea, ready to launch if needed. It also has airborne nuclear capabilities, using Rafale fighter jets armed with ASMPA cruise missiles, launched from land bases or aircraft carriers. As of 2024, France has about 290 nuclear warheads, with around 100 to 120 actively deployed. That puts it just ahead of the UK, but far behind Russia and the US. Israel is one of the world's most secretive nuclear powers. Unlike other countries on this list, Israel has never officially confirmed or denied having nuclear weapons, a policy known as nuclear ambiguity. But despite the silence, there's little doubt. Israel has the bomb. The roots of Israel's nuclear program go back to the country's founding in 1948. Surrounded by hostile neighbors and having survived a war right after declaring independence, Israel's leaders believed early on that they needed a strategic advantage. In the 1950s, Israel formed a close partnership with France, which provided a major boost. France helped build the Dimona nuclear reactor in the Negev desert, officially for peaceful energy research. But beneath that cover, Israel developed a secret weapons program. French engineers and scientists worked alongside Israelis to create facilities for plutonium extraction, essential for building bombs. By the early 1960s, U.S. intelligence had picked up on suspicious activity. High-altitude U-2 spy planes photographed the Dimona site. When questioned, Israel called it a textile plant. President Kennedy pushed for inspections, but after his death, U.S. pressure eased. Most experts believe Israel had its first functional nuclear weapon by 1967, just before the Six-Day War. However, Israel didn't rely only on foreign assistance. It also used espionage to fill in the gaps in its nuclear development, including inside the United States. One of the most well-known cases was Jonathan Pollard, a U.S. Navy intelligence analyst who spied for Israel in the 1980s. He passed thousands of classified documents to Israeli agents, some of which included information on nuclear technology, regional threats, and U.S. satellite surveillance. Pollard was arrested in 1985 and sentenced to life in prison. He became a source of tension between the U.S. and Israel for decades. Beyond Pollard, there were multiple incidents where U.S. officials suspected Israeli agents of trying to acquire restricted materials. In some cases, American-made components and nuclear-related technology were illegally diverted or smuggled to Israel using front companies. These episodes helped Israel develop its nuclear program independently and without relying on international treaties or inspections. To this day, Israel maintains strict secrecy about its arsenal. It doesn't conduct public tests. It doesn't admit how many warheads it has. And it doesn't sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, avoiding the obligations and inspections that come with it. One major leak occurred in 1986, when former Dimona technician Mordecai Vanunu shared photos and documents with the British press. He was later kidnapped by Israeli agents, brought back to Israel, and imprisoned for nearly 20 years. The information he revealed suggested Israel had advanced warhead designs and the ability to produce thermonuclear nuclear weapons. Estimates in 2024 suggest that Israel has between 80 and 100 nuclear warheads. It is believed to have a full nuclear triad, land-based missiles, like the Jericho series, capable of reaching Iran and parts of Europe. Aircraft, such as F-15s and possibly F-35s, modified to carry nuclear bombs. Submarines, specifically Dolphin-class subs built in Germany, reportedly armed with nuclear-capable cruise missiles, offering Israel a second strike option. China became the fifth country in the world to develop nuclear weapons. After decades of foreign occupation, civil war, and pressure from global powers, China wanted to guarantee its survival and independence, and nuclear weapons were seen as the ultimate shield. In the 1950s, China was still rebuilding after years of war. At that time, it had a close alliance with the Soviet Union, and the Soviets agreed to help China develop nuclear technology. They provided blueprints, training, and equipment, but not a complete bomb. By the late 1950s, relations between China and the Soviet Union had soured. The Soviets pulled out their scientists and cut off support. Instead of giving up, China decided to go it alone. The country poured its limited resources into developing its own bomb, despite poverty, famine, and political instability. In 1964, China successfully tested its first atomic bomb in the desert at Lop Nur. The test was called 596, and it made China the first Asian country with nuclear weapons. Just 3 years later, in 1967, China tested its first hydrogen bomb, much faster than anyone expected. China's early nuclear doctrine was based on deterrence only. The country declared a no-first-use policy, promising never to use nuclear weapons unless attacked first. This policy remains in place to this day. Its first generation of weapons included land-based missiles with limited range and older bombers. It had no real submarine capability until the 2000s, but things have changed. In the last 2 decades, China has rapidly modernized and expanded its nuclear forces. It has developed new mobile ICBMs, like the DF-31 and DF-41, that can reach targets around the world. It also built nuclear-powered submarines that can launch ballistic missiles from hidden positions at sea. China is also building new missile silos in western deserts, possibly to house hundreds of additional ICBMs. It's improving its warheads, making them smaller and more accurate. Unlike Russia and the US, China doesn't maintain a full nuclear triad. It has land-based missiles and submarines, but its bomber force is still catching up. However, recent developments, like the H-20 stealth bomber in development, suggest that China may be moving toward a true triad soon. India became the 6th country in the world to develop nuclear weapons, but it took a very different path from the others. For years, India opposed nuclear weapons and supported global disarmament. But over time, security threats and regional rivalries pushed the country to change course. After gaining independence in 1947, India focused on science and technology as a way to modernize. Its first prime minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, was deeply interested in atomic research, but for peaceful purposes only. India built nuclear reactors, trained scientists, and invested in atomic energy. Everything changed in 1971. India fought a brief but intense war with Pakistan, helping to create the independent nation of Bangladesh. The war shocked Pakistan, and soon after, its leader vowed to develop nuclear weapons. That same year, China, which had fought a war with India in 1962, had already become a nuclear power. India now faced 2 nuclear-armed rivals, one to the west, one to the north. In 1974, India tested its first nuclear device. The test was called Smiling Buddha and was conducted in the Rajasthan desert. India claimed it was a peaceful nuclear explosion, but the message was clear. India could build the bomb. Still, India didn't rush to build a full arsenal. For the next 2 decades, it maintained a policy of nuclear ambiguity, not confirming or denying that it had weapons. But in 1998, India made things official. It conducted a series of nuclear tests under Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, declaring itself a nuclear-armed state. India explained that its weapons were meant for deterrence, not aggression. It declared a no-first-use policy, meaning it would only use nuclear weapons if attacked first. Today, India has around 170 nuclear warheads. It does not maintain a full nuclear triad yet, but it is working toward one. Its current delivery systems include land-based missiles, like the Agni series, capable of hitting targets in China or Pakistan. Aircraft, such as modified Mirage 2000 and Sukhoi jets, which can carry nuclear bombs. Submarines, including the INS Arihant, a nuclear-powered submarine submarine that can launch ballistic missiles, though this part of the force is still in early development. Pakistan became the 7th country in the world to develop nuclear weapons. The country had just suffered a national trauma, the War of 1971, where it lost East Pakistan, now known as Bangladesh, in a crushing defeat by India. That war changed everything. India had proved it could crush Pakistan militarily. Soon after, India tested its first nuclear weapon in 1974. For Pakistan, the message was clear. If it didn't develop its own bomb, it might not survive the next war. Pakistan's prime minister at the time, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, made it clear Pakistan would do whatever it took. He famously said that even if Pakistanis had to eat grass, they would build the bomb. But how does a poor country under international scrutiny suddenly build a nuclear arsenal? Enter Abdul Qadir Khan, a metallurgist working in the Netherlands, with access to highly classified nuclear centrifuge designs used to enrich uranium. In the mid-1970s, Khan quietly copied technical documents and returned to Pakistan, where he became the architect of the country's nuclear program. With Khan's stolen designs and a network of front companies across Europe, Pakistan secretly built centrifuges to enrich uranium. It bypassed restrictions by smuggling parts, using fake end-user certificates, and relying on a black market supply chain spread across multiple countries. Pakistan also received crucial support, quietly, from China, a country that shared its rivalry with India and had its own reasons to assist. Beijing helped Pakistan build a nuclear test site and provided designs for a simple nuclear bomb. The United States, meanwhile, knew something was going on, but chose to look the other way. Because in the 1980s, the U.S. needed Pakistan's help to support the Afghan Mujahideen fighting against the Soviet Union. Pakistan was a key Cold War ally, and Washington didn't want to push too hard. By the mid-1980s, Pakistan had all the parts it needed, but it didn't test a bomb. Not yet. Instead, it kept its progress secret, letting ambiguity serve as quiet deterrence. Then came 1998. India tested 5 nuclear devices in May. Pakistan couldn't stay silent any longer. Just 17 days later, it conducted 6 nuclear tests in the Chagai Hills, making it an official nuclear power. Today, Pakistan is believed to have 170 to 180 nuclear warheads, roughly the same as India. Its delivery systems include medium and long-range ballistic missiles, like the Shaheen and Gauri series, fighter aircraft modified to carry nuclear bombs, short-range tactical missiles, like the Nasser, designed for battlefield use. But there's a darker chapter to Pakistan's nuclear story: proliferation. In the early 2000s, it was revealed that A.Q. Khan, the very man who built Pakistan's bomb, had sold nuclear technology to Iran, Libya, and North Korea through a global black market. Centrifuge designs, components, even full weapon blueprints were passed on. Khan was placed under house arrest but never faced trial. North Korea is the most recent country to develop nuclear weapons. After the Korean War ended in 1953, North Korea remained technically at war with South Korea and the U.S. The North's founder, Kim Il-sung, saw enemies everywhere and believed nuclear weapons were the only way to guarantee safety. In the 1960s and 70s, North Korea began building a nuclear industry with help from the Soviet Union. The Soviets provided a small research reactor and training, but no weapons technology. Later, China also gave some assistance, but never directly helped with bomb making. By the 1980s, North Korea had built its own reactors and started producing plutonium. In 1985, it joined the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but it delayed inspections and hid key facilities. Western intelligence agencies grew suspicious. In the early 1990s, the International Atomic Energy Agency discovered evidence of secret nuclear activities. This triggered a crisis with the U.S., and in 1994, both countries signed the agreed framework. North Korea promised to freeze its program in exchange for energy aid and light water reactors. But that deal didn't last. In 2002, the U.S. accused North Korea of secretly enriching uranium. In 2006, North Korea tested its first nuclear bomb. It wasn't very powerful, but it proved they had crossed the line. More tests followed in 2009, 2013, 2016, twice, 2017, and possibly more since then. Each test showed progress. The 2017 detonation was by far the strongest, possibly a hydrogen bomb. That same year, North Korea also tested long-range missiles, including the Hwasong-15, which could theoretically reach the U.S. mainland. Today, North Korea is estimated to have between 30 and 50 nuclear warheads, and the number is likely growing. Unlike most nuclear states, North Korea isn't part of any arms control treaty. It refuses inspections, denies having to follow global rules, and regularly issues threats. Its delivery systems include intercontinental ballistic missiles, missiles, like the Hwasong-15 and Hwasong-17, which can potentially reach North America. Submarine-launched missiles, still under development. In 2022, North Korea passed a law declaring its status as a nuclear power irreversible and saying it could launch a preemptive nuclear strike if it feels threatened.